Good afternoon and welcome to General Services Public Works Committee meeting. With me today are Council Members Wood and English. It's November 7th at noon and we are meeting in the library community room. Today we have 3 items on our agenda. The first being approval of an agreement with Granicus to provide host compliance services. And we have Director of Municipal Services, Renata McLeod, with us today.
Thank you. Yes, as you know, staff has been bringing up some short-term rental items to you recently. And one of the items that we really feel are important to move forward with is actually gathering some of the data of where all the units are. I mean, obviously we know where the legal units are, but as we interviewed 3 different host compliance companies, we were able to sit down and do a showcase with 2 of the companies to kind of see what their computer systems look like and how they would work with our organization. We really found that Granicus had the best dashboard and the ease of use that we're looking for. At this point, staff is really looking at getting them to provide the identification services. So they have a couple modules that we want to move forward with. It's under the budgetary price requirements to do any sort of formal bid process, but we just didn't have budget authority in this fiscal year to provide these services and go out and utilize this money, so we're here kind of seeking to do that. These funds would come out of the general fund dollars and then get reimbursed with revenue with the March renewals. So what we're looking at is 3 modules that we really felt were important for us. The first was the property identification. We'll get the owner's name and address and location so that we can start mapping out where they're at. And as we're looking at impacts to neighborhoods, we'll have the correct information. The next thing is the notification. We want to hold off on that until council really decides what the rules are, how many units we want to allow per block or the density. It would be pretty hard to get 800 in and then turn around and say we only want to license 600, so we're kind of holding off on that, but they will provide that service as part of this cost. They'll also institute a 24/7 hotline, so all the complaints can start going there and we can start getting data on the real-time complaints and more information on complaints directly. And then they're willing to do monitoring for compliance as we move forward with our new code. So that would be another module. They'd be able to scrub the over 70 rental websites that are out right now. And they can do that on a weekly basis, and they screen capture all the advertisements and they can tell who's licensed and who's not. And any other code items that we might include in the ordinance to come. So right now, the amount of legal permits that we have are 453. The estimation from the 3 host compliance companies that we talked to was anywhere from 840 to 1,200 units that are out there. So as you can see, there's a lack of data that we don't have, and we'd like to garner that data. It's going to take about 6 weeks for them to complete the analysis and provide us that database. And with the holidays coming up, it may take an additional 2 weeks. So we wanted to jump on this now and get started so that that 6 to 8 week time clock starts and we can get that information hopefully around January 11th. So that gives us a real tight timeline to analyze that data and come back with code recommendations for our March renewal. But it's the best that we have at this point in time, and we think they're going to be a good partner for us. So they do offer also the module of providing the licenses and accepting the funds and dealing with all the licensing stuff, but we just as staff weren't ready for that portion. Because of that March renewal, we really think we need a little bit of time under our belt with new regulations before we look forward to that other module. But again, all these costs will be borne by the fee associated with the license. And so right now that averages out to be an increase of $114.30 per license. Again, the more licenses we have on board by the time March comes around, we can divide that cost accordingly. In order to increase that fee, we will have to come back with a fee increase public hearing. So that'll be another step in the process. But once we finalize the contract agreement with Granicus and come up with a final document there, we'll be able to bring known data by the time it comes to council in a couple weeks. And I stand for questions.
One thing I think it is important that we get the data, get something going. And this, from looking at the material and everything, looks like, provide a lot of things. I see that they've already, they've got track record in the state of Idaho, and I guess in a different capacity as a vendor with the city. So I think that sounds good. I mean, other than getting, into the weeds. But although I did have one question on page 5. It talks, and it's under, address identification, setup, and configuration. But they've got to get data from us, which makes sense, including assessor and registration files. So data from the county. But is that, from the county, the assessor files, and then is that voter registration or vehicle registration or
No,
what?
I think they get the information off of the ownership data points. So we'll be able to transfer our GIS file that we have already for existing permits, and then
Yeah.
they'll be able to add to it as they find the ones that are non-permitted. And if the owner's in another state, I mean, they do all that research for us, and so they'll provide
Right.
us that data back.
Okay. Well, it just had assessor data and registration, but maybe that's like parcel number or something
I
to
think
identify?
they refer to the permit as a registration.
Okay.
But it's a permit, our
Okay.
permit information.
And then the other thing, the roughly, call it $115 that it looks, is that, so is that for this on top of whatever we're already charging, or is that the total? So
Yes.
what would the total be?
So that'll be on top of our current, and that will bring it to $399 approximately.
If that's, okay. Okay.
Yeah, because we still have all of our staff time reviewing, and the renewals are, I think, $89. So the renewal ones will be the $114 on top of the $89. So if they're renewing, it's a little less.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one, take a bigger hit,
Yeah.
but then, okay. Okay,
Sorry,
thanks.
I
That's
didn't include that. Yeah.
good for me.
That was my question exactly, so thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Renata, I agree, we need these services, but I didn't hear the total dollar amount. I know that will be reimbursed, but you're asking us today for, I think it was 50.
So it's $51,784.50. So that would be our budget authority. I'm still negotiating a little bit with Granicus because of our timeline of need, so it might come down just a little bit from that. But if you give us that budget authority, then we can spend at least that amount.
Okay, and then another question. One of the modules is the 24/7 hotline for the complaints. So they're just going to collect the data. Who's going to actually respond to the complaints?
So we have to do a workflow with them. So there'll be several stages here before we go into implementation. So we're going to be meeting with PD and code enforcement and licensing. And so depending on the type of complaint, the workflow will change. So if it's like a current party in progress, their workflow will be to call PD and report the current party in progress. If it's garbage in the front yard, it may go to code enforcement to handle the next day. If it's an illegal unit that isn't licensed, then it'll circulate back to licensing and code enforcement to follow up with getting them into compliance. So there's a couple workflows we still need to work through. But there's all sorts of options on how we want to handle that.
Okay, and one thing I always ask, is just a blanket question from me, whether it pertains to police or fire or streets or anybody.
Yep.
Have they been part of the conversation? Have they brought forward ideas on how they might manage this?
Right. So we had our executive team last week, and we talked about that with all the participants in the room, including water, wastewater, building. They're a party to this as well, because we're having some units come forward that may have done some work without a permit, sometimes not knowing they needed a permit, sometimes maybe knowing. So we're juggling through all that. PD was not present at that meeting, but I did follow up with them after that meeting, and they've given me a direct contact to work with.
Oh,
So
great.
I'll be meeting with them.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Hope so. I would make a motion to recommend that council approve the host compliance service agreement with Granicus.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Forgot to ask for any further discussion, but
Well, just, you're going to answer, is this going to the full council or not? Or-
Yeah, the contract will go to council. We have it scheduled for under consent since it's under that bid requirement. It meets our purchasing policy that allows us to do that, but it certainly can be pulled off for further discussion if need be.
Well, it just seems because this has been such a topic of interest, and this is a key step, hopefully not too controversial, but probably good to have it out there, so I would think.
Okay.
thank you, Renata.
Thank you.
Our second item today is approval of a professional services agreement with JUB Engineers to provide engineering services for the 2022-2023 wastewater collection system capital improvement projects. And with us today, we have Utility Project Manager with the wastewater department, Larry Parsons. Welcome, Larry.
How are we? Good,
Good.
good. Yeah, so this is our yearly agreement. We have a 5-year agreement with JUB. This is the last year of it. And this is for the sewer construction out in the street, not in the treatment plant. So, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's stuff we do every year. It's a budgeted item that we do. And we're asking that you approve of the professional services agreement for $313,900.
Thank you.
Madam
Christie?
Chair, what's the terms of the agreement? Is it another 5 years?
No. We'll RFP next year
Okay.
for collection system services for
Okay.
rehab and construction.
Okay.
Any questions?
Could you, I don't have the motion in front of me. Do you mind, Dan?
Oh,
Thank
sure, I
you.
don't mind. Well, given that, I'll make a motion to recommend that council approve a professional service agreement with JUB Engineers to provide engineering services for the 22-23 wastewater collection system capital improvement projects.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you very much.
Long title, short presentation.
Right. Thank you.
All right, our third and final item on our agenda today is the award of bid to the lowest responsive bidder, Ferguson Waterworks, in the amount of $99,652.80 for the purchase of armor cast meter boxes. And with us today, we have Utility Supervisor Glenn Polstra with the Water Department.
Thank you
Hi,
for
welcome.
seeing me today. Do you guys know?
Just hit enter.
Enter, okay. I just have a brief presentation for the purchase of meter boxes for our Yardley Service Replacement Program from Ferguson Waterworks. A little history on our Yardley Service Replacement Program. We've instituted this program to try to, as a preventative maintenance procedure, to try to replace these service lines before they fail, and causing overtime at middle of the night or undue times during the day on our normal work schedule. A little history on the service line. It was built back in the 60s and 70s, and we're finding that it is becoming brittle underground and cracking and causing major destruction in the street and quite a bit of overtime. These meter boxes basically house our equipment, our meter setters and our meters, and protecting them from any damage to trucks or any equipment driving on the street. Most of these meter boxes are set behind the curb, so they're pretty safe from any type of damage, but we do have plenty that are in approaches and do take a beating quite a bit. So this is just an example of some of the boxes and lids that we use on a regular basis to house our equipment. They do show quite a bit of strength. This backhoe is about 18,000 pounds, and they do handle quite a bit of load when we drive over them. And our biggest biggest issue is usually garbage trucks when they go over them, and you know how heavy they are, so. This is just some pictures of excavations that we do on a regular basis for our program. We do have a concrete box that was used years and years ago that's not as durable, that we typically take out of the ground. They're quite a bit heavier and more brittle, so they get destroyed a lot easier. These boxes have stood the test of time. We've been putting them in for approximately 15 years now, and we've researched quite a few other boxes that just don't stand up to these ones, so they're quite durable. We've solicited quotes from 3 different vendors, one being Ferguson Waterworks, Consolidated Supply, and HD Fowler. 2 of them responded, and the third one did not submit a quote. We do have this in the budget for our operation and maintenance, line item of $750,000. And we would recommend that council approve the lowest responsive bid for the armor cast meter boxes for Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $99,652.80. And we would ask that this be put on the consent calendar as well.
Thank you, Glenn. Any questions?
Well, is this the same program, like out at our house, we're in Coeur d'Alene Place, and I think I remember seeing a new box. Is that like the same box as in front of houses?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because it seemed like this was only going to be 100 and some boxes, but is it just one piece of what we're doing for the whole citywide, or?
So this would be a set of boxes, basically. We will have a 12-inch and 2 18s. The reason we go so deep is with the frost that we have in the wintertime. You can see that. The frost gets driven down, and we use the boxes. We'll have a 4-foot set of boxes, basically. And so it's not backfilled inside the boxes and allowing the ground heat to keep our meters from freezing.
Yeah.
So when we say 100 boxes, we mean 100 set of boxes, so there's gonna be quite a few and a lid as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, I can do that. Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to recommend council award the bid to Ferguson Waterworks in the amount of $99,652.80 for the purchase of armor cast meter boxes.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes our General Services Public Works Committee meeting on November 7th. Wishing everybody a safe, snowy day.
And a happy election day tomorrow, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna be a but I voted.